Have you ever felt the sting of silence from someone who claims to want you? That frustrating moment when you know he craves you, but he pulls away. It's confusing, even painful. But what if I told you there's a deeper psychological truth behind his silence? One that could change the way you see relationships forever. Stay with me, because the answer will shock you. Men and women are not the same, and we have to start by understanding that. The way men process emotions, especially intense emotions like desire, longing, or even love, is fundamentally different from the way women do. You see, women are naturally more expressive, more inclined to talk through their emotions, to share, to seek connection. That's not a weakness, it's a profound strength. But men, particularly those who have spent their lives conditioned by the demands of competence, success, and control, often struggle with emotional expression in a way that women don't. Now, when a man craves a woman, when he truly desires her, not just in the fleeting, superficial sense, but in a deep, almost primal way, something strange happens. He doesn't necessarily move toward her in a straight line. He doesn't always articulate what he feels. Instead, he may pull back. He may fall silent. And this is where so many women misinterpret what's actually happening. The immediate assumption is that he must not care enough, that his silence is a form of neglect or disinterest. But that's not always the case. In many instances, what's actually happening is something far more complex. Men have spent their entire lives being taught, explicitly or implicitly, that emotions are dangerous, that emotions get in the way of logic, of control, of success. A man who becomes too emotionally involved too quickly can feel as though he's losing control of himself, of his own stability. And this is terrifying because for a man, control isn't just about keeping his emotions in check. It's about maintaining his identity, his autonomy, his sense of self. If he spent years constructing his world carefully, keeping his emotions compartmentalized so that they don't interfere with his ambitions, his responsibilities, or his self-impunity, then suddenly experiencing overwhelming desire for a woman can feel destabilizing. This is where withdrawal comes in. His silence is not necessarily a lack of care. It can be a response to inner turmoil. It's his attempt to regain equilibrium, to process what he's feeling in a way that doesn't make him feel weak or vulnerable. And here's something crucial to understand. Men, particularly strong, intelligent, competent men, do not like feeling out of control. They don't like feeling exposed, emotionally raw. They don't like feeling as though someone else holds too much power over their inner world. So what does he do? He retreats. Not necessarily forever, but for a time. He goes quiet, he pulls away, he might even seem distant or indifferent. And this is the moment where so many relationships collapse, not because he doesn't care, but because his silence is misinterpreted as apathy. The woman, feeling neglected, starts chasing, demanding answers, reassurance, clarity. But the more she chases, the more he retreats, because now it's not just his emotions he's struggling with, it's the added pressure of needing to explain something he may not even fully understand himself. There's also another layer to this. Men are deeply tied to their sense of purpose. A man's self-worth is often measured not by how much love he can give, but by how much he can achieve, how much value he can provide to the world. So when he meets a woman he truly desires, a woman who stirs something deep within him, he doesn't just feel attraction, he feels the weight of responsibility. He begins to ask himself, can I provide for her? Can I be the man she needs? Am I strong enough to handle this? And if he's uncertain, if he feels inadequate in any way, his instinct is not to talk through those fears, it's to withdraw until he can find an answer. This is why it's so important for women to understand that a man's silence is not always a verdict on his feelings. Sometimes It's just his way of working through emotions he doesn't yet have the words for. It's his process of coming to terms with what he wants and whether he's ready for it. And here's the paradox. If a woman reacts to his silence with neediness, with panic, with attempts to force a response, she may inadvertently push him further away. But if she does the opposite, if she remains grounded, secure in herself, unbothered by his temporary retreat, something fascinating happens. His fear diminishes, his respect for her deepens, and instead of running, he finds himself drawn back to her, not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration and desire. Men don't want to be needed in a desperate way. They want to be desired in a way that respects their autonomy. They want to feel like they can come toward you, not because you demand it, but because they choose it. And the more a woman embodies that self-assurance, that quiet confidence, the less likely his silence will drive her into insecurity. Instead, it will become a temporary pause, one that, if handled correctly, will lead to something even stronger. And that's the truth about why a man who craves you might go silent. It's not always about you. Sometimes it's about his own battle with himself. Men have a deep, almost primal fear of vulnerability. And this isn't something they consciously decide. It's something that has been ingrained in them for years, decades, entire lifetimes. The world tells men to be strong, to be competent, to be in control, and vulnerability threatens all of that. It's perceived as weakness, as something that can be exploited, as something that can dismantle everything they've worked to build. So when a man craves a woman, when he desires her not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, he finds himself standing at a precipice, one that he never fully prepared for. You see, a man's deepest instinct is to protect himself from pain, not just physical pain, but emotional devastation, psychological exposure, the kind of suffering that can shake the very foundations of his identity. Because when a man allows himself to feel deeply for a woman, he is no longer just an independent entity. He becomes tied to something beyond himself. And that, for many men, is terrifying because it means the potential for loss. It means the possibility of rejection, of inadequacy, of failure. This is why so many men struggle with expressing their emotions, even when they feel them intensely. They have been taught from childhood that emotional expression is dangerous, that it makes them weak, that it makes them less masculine, less powerful, less in control. And so instead of leaning into those emotions, they repress them, they suppress them, they bury them beneath layers of logic, of distraction, of silence, because to fully acknowledge their feelings means to risk something they don't know if they can handle. Now imagine what happens when a man meets a woman who completely shatters his emotional equilibrium, a woman who isn't just another fleeting attraction, but someone who ignites something real, something profound, something undeniable. He wants her, he craves her, but at the same time he resists, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much. He knows that if he lets himself go fully into this, he is opening himself up to a level of vulnerability he may not be prepared for. And so he hesitates, he pulls back, he might even go silent, not because he wants to, but because he doesn't know what else to do. This is where the paradox of desire and fear collides. The more he craves a woman, the more he fears losing himself in that craving. The more he wants to be close, the more he fights against the part of himself that tells him closeness is dangerous. And this internal battle often leads to the exact behavior that confuses women the most: his hesitation, his withdrawal, his silence. She sees it as indifference, but in reality it's self-preservation. It's a desperate attempt to reconcile his longing with his fear. And here's the thing, most men won't even recognize this as fear. They won't say to themselves, I'm afraid of vulnerability. No, they'll rationalize it. They'll tell themselves they're too busy, that they need time to think, that they aren't ready for a relationship. They'll construct logical explanations to avoid confronting the real issue, that deep down, they don't know how to be vulnerable without feeling like they're losing something essential to their identity. But what's even more fascinating is that this fear of vulnerability is not just about emotional exposure, it's also about responsibility. Because when a man truly loves a woman, when he sees her as someone he wants to build a life with, he feels an immense weight on his shoulders. He doesn't just want to be with her, he wants to be worthy of her. He wants to be strong enough, capable enough, successful enough. And if he doubts himself, if he feels even the slightest insecurity about whether he can measure up to the kind of man she deserves, that fear will manifest as distance, as silence, as avoidance. A man would rather pull away than risk being seen as inadequate. He would rather retreat into himself than allow a woman to witness his uncertainty, because deep down, he doesn't want to disappoint her. He doesn't want to be a burden. And if he's struggling with his own internal battles, his career, his finances, his mental state, he may feel that getting too close to her would expose all the cracks he's trying so hard to hide. This is why so many women feel frustrated when men seem emotionally unavailable. They think, if he likes me, why doesn't he just say it? If he wants me, why doesn't he act on it? But what they don't realize is that for many men, acknowledging those feelings is not the hard part. The hard part is believing they are strong enough to handle them, believing they are capable of carrying the weight of love without losing themselves in the process. And so they hesitate, they stay silent, not because they don't care, but because caring means exposing themselves to the possibility of pain, rejection, and failure. And that is a risk that many men have spent their entire lives trying to avoid. There is something fundamentally interesting about human psychology, especially when it comes to relationships. People assume that if someone wants something, if they truly desire it, they will move toward it, that they will chase it, claim it, make it theirs. But that isn't always how it works. In fact, sometimes the more a person wants something, the more they resist it. The more they crave closeness, the more they create distance. And when a man is deeply drawn to a woman, when he finds himself craving her in a way that unsettles him, he may instinctively pull back. He may go silent. He may create space, not because he doesn't want her, but because he wants her so much that it forces him into a state of uncertainty. This is what most people fail to understand. The instinct to retreat is not always a rejection. Sometimes it's a test, a subconscious test, one that isn't necessarily intentional, but is deeply ingrained in human behavior. Because when a man starts to feel something profound, something that threatens his usual state of independence, his first reaction might not be to lean in, it might be to step back, to see what happens when he does, to see how she reacts. And this is where things get complicated, because if he pulls away and she immediately panics, if she starts chasing, if she demands answers, if she tries to close the gap he's created, then in his mind something shifts. Suddenly, he's no longer feeling the pull of desire, the natural longing that comes with distance. Instead, he starts feeling pressure. And pressure kills attraction faster than almost anything else. Men don't respond well to pressure in relationships. They don't want to feel trapped, obligated, or controlled. They want to feel like they are choosing to be there, that their presence is voluntary, driven by genuine desire rather than expectation. So when a man creates distance, even subconsciously, and the woman reacts with desperation or fear, he registers that as a loss of balance. The dynamic changes. The attraction fades. But if the opposite happens, if he pulls away and she remains steady, if she continues living her life as if nothing has fundamentally changed, if she maintains her confidence and doesn't chase, then something else happens. He starts to feel the weight of that distance. He starts to wonder why she isn't reacting the way he expected. And that curiosity, that realization that she is not dependent on his presence, reignites the very attraction that made him want her in the first place. This is something deeply rooted in psychology. We desire what feels slightly out of reach. The moment something becomes too available, too easy, we take it for granted. It's not a conscious decision. It's just how the brain works. We assign value to things that require effort. This is why people respect what they have to earn and dismiss what is freely given. And in relationships, this dynamic plays out over and over again. A man who is truly drawn to a woman doesn't want her to crumble the moment he steps back. He doesn't want her to fall apart to beg for his attention, to make her happiness contingent on his every move. That isn't attractive. That isn't inspiring. That isn't the kind of energy that pulls someone in. What pulls him in, what makes him come back stronger, more certain, more committed, is realizing that she is whole with or without him, that she wants him, but she doesn't need him. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think love is about constant closeness, about never letting go, about making sure the other person is always there, always available, always reassuring. But that isn't love, that's dependence. And dependence erodes respect. What truly builds a powerful relationship is knowing when to let there be space, knowing that attraction thrives in the absence of pressure, that desire is fueled by mystery, by the ability to choose, by the realization that the other person is not an extension of you, but an individual with their own life, their own passions, their own sense of self. And this applies to both men and women. If you want to keep someone's desire alive, you cannot suffocate it. You cannot demand it, chase it, force it into existence. You have to let it breathe. You have to let the other person feel what life is like without you, because only then can they truly appreciate what it means to have you. And this is what a man is doing, even if he doesn't fully realize it when he creates distance. He is feeling the weight of his emotions and trying to regain control. He is seeing what happens when he steps back, testing whether the pull is still there, whether the attraction is strong enough to bring him back naturally rather than through obligation. And if a woman understands this, if she doesn't panic, if she doesn't chase, if she remains confident and unshaken, then she passes the test without even knowing it. And in doing so, she becomes even more desirable, not because she played a game, but because she demonstrated the one thing that truly makes someone irresistible: self-respect. People often make a fundamental mistake when it comes to relationships. They tie their sense of worth to how someone else treats them. They wait for validation, for reassurance, for someone else to confirm that they are lovable, valuable, desirable. And in doing so, they hand over the very thing they should protect the most: their self-worth. This is one of the most dangerous psychological traps a person can fall into, because the moment your worth is dependent on someone else's approval, you are no longer in control of your own life. You become reactive. You become desperate. You start chasing after people, not because they are good for you, but because you believe their attention defines you. And that is the fastest way to destroy not only attraction, but your own sense of identity. Men and women both fall into this pattern, but it manifests differently. A woman, for example, might feel an intense connection with a man. She might see his potential, might feel deeply drawn to him. But when he pulls away, when he goes silent, when he doesn't show up in the way she expects, she starts questioning herself. Did I do something wrong? Am I not enough? Why is he treating me this way? And instead of realizing that his actions are a reflection of him, his fears, his struggles, his inability to process emotions, she makes it about herself. She starts thinking that if only she were better, if only she were more attractive, if only she proved herself in some way, then he would come back. Then he would choose her. Then he would see her worth. But that is a profoundly flawed way of thinking, because your worth is not something that another person gets to decide. It is not something that fluctuates based on whether someone texts you back or prioritizes you in their life. It is something intrinsic, something that exists independent of external validation. And the moment you start internalizing this, the moment you stop allowing other people to dictate how you feel about yourself, everything changes. The way you carry yourself changes, the way people respond to you changes, and more importantly, the way you allow yourself to be treated changes. This is why confidence is so attractive, because confidence is the external expression of self-respect. It signals to the world that you are not seeking permission to be valued, that you do not need to be chosen in order to feel complete. And when a person operates from this mindset, they naturally draw others in, not by trying, not by chasing, but simply by existing in a way that commands respect. People don't want to be with someone who needs them to feel whole. They want to be with someone who is already whole, because that kind of person is strong. That kind of person is free, and freedom is intoxicating. It is the thing that makes someone irreplaceable. Because if you do not need someone, then they know on a deep level that you are with them because you choose to be, not because you are afraid of being alone, not because you need their validation, but because you see value in them as a person. And that is what makes relationships work.